Kyle Pugh, 29 years old, a bright, upbeat soul from Shropshire who could light up any room just by walking into it. His friends always said Kyle had this rare gift. Even the darkest room felt warmer when he laughed. He loved adventure, connected deeply with people, and would drop everything to help someone he cared about. But everything began to change when he met Amy, a relationship that slowly dragged him from laughter to fear. A relationship that looked like love from the outside, but felt like danger behind closed doors. Not long before he died, Kyle told his friends, "One day these fights are going to go too far, and I don't know what's going to happen then." No one realized. That day was much closer than they thought. And then came the night of March 22nd, 2022. The night when someone's breath ended, and someone else's lie began. This is the case of Kyle Pugh, a case where the performance was more terrifying than the murder itself. On a quiet March night, something violent happened inside a small house in Shropshire. A struggle took place. It was short, frantic, and quiet enough that no one outside heard it. When the fighting stopped, one person was lying still on the floor. The other person was already making up a story to tell everyone. The truth about those final minutes would tear a family apart and reveal a disturbing secret. Kyle Pugh was from Newport, Shropshire. Everyone there knew him. He was the kind of person who made a room feel brighter when he entered. He loved to make people laugh, even if it sometimes got him into trouble. He was a loyal friend and protective of the people he loved. He was always searching for his next adventure. As an adult, Kyle's life got complicated when he met Amy. She was 5 years older than him. Their relationship was intense and passionate from the start. At first, they were inseparable. They were always together at the local pub, touching and laughing. To everyone else, they seemed like the perfect couple. But in private, their relationship was different. Their marriage was unstable. Small disagreements would turn into passionate arguments. They would accuse each other of being unfaithful. Their late-night drinking often led to big fights. Doors would slam, voices would yell, and sometimes they would hit each other. Their friends and family saw what was happening. Alcohol and drugs were a big part of Amy and Kyle's life together. A fun night out often ended in a fight that left them both emotionally and sometimes physically hurt. By 2021, their marriage was in trouble. They broke up and got back together several times. Every time they tried to fix things, they would fall back into the same bad habits. Kyle told his friends he didn't feel safe anymore. He was scared the fights were getting worse and that something terrible would happen. Amy was very possessive. She acted like she was the victim of Kyle's problems, his drinking, his behavior, and his failures. But the people close to her saw a frightening rage and an obsessive jealousy. As the police would later say, their relationship was toxic and explosive. Love and hate were mixed together. On the night of March 22, 2022, that explosive mix led to a deadly end. March 22, 2022 started like many other nights for Amy and Kyle. The couple had spent the day at home. Their neighbors were used to hearing them argue. It was a normal sound in the neighborhood, the sound of a marriage breaking down. That evening, both Amy and Kyle had been drinking. This was a common and dangerous pattern for them. Alcohol made their tempers worse, not better. Amy was in a bad mood when the sun went down. Kyle was restless and tried to avoid making her angry. By late evening, an argument began. No one knows for sure what started it. Maybe it was about cheating, or maybe it was about one of their past breakups. Or maybe it was just years of hurt and frustration finally coming to a head. The fight quickly got louder. They were arguing about the same old problems: betrayal, broken promises, and why they couldn't let each other go, even though they were bad for one another. Later, people would say their relationship was like a storm that was always getting closer to a disaster. Friends said Amy was controlling, Kyle was impulsive, and together they were explosive. Inside their living room, the argument reached its peak. Kyle tried to walk away to calm things down, but Amy was too angry. She hit him with her hands and then grabbed him to stop him from leaving. The violence escalated quickly. At some point, Amy forced Kyle to the floor. What happened next was figured out by investigators using forensic evidence and the autopsy report. Kyle was pinned down, struggling to breathe as Amy's hands squeezed his neck. Strangulation is not a fast way to die. It takes several long, terrible minutes. The person being strangled fights for air. The person doing the strangling has time to think, to reconsider, and to stop. Medical experts would later stress this point. Amy could have let go at any moment, but she didn't. She kept the pressure on his neck until he stopped struggling, until his body went limp, and until he died. When it was over, Amy did not call for help right away. She stayed in the house with her unconscious husband for nearly 20 minutes. Medical experts later said that if she had called for help immediately, Kyle might have lived. Instead, she used that time to create a lie. Amy moved around the house, changing the scene to make it look like a suicide. She practiced the story she would tell. She planned to act like a devastated wife who had found her husband after he had killed himself. Only after she had set the scene and prepared her act did Amy call 999, the British emergency number. At 11:17 p.m., the emergency operator received Amy's call. The recording of that call would later become key evidence in court. Amy's voice sounded panicked and hysterical. She told the operator her husband had hanged himself. She begged for help. "My husband, he's hanged himself. Please, you have to help," she said. During the call, she cried and gasped. She asked, "Is he dead?" In a voice that sounded broken. The operator told her how to perform CPR. In the background, you can hear thumping sounds, as if Amy was doing chest compressions. To the emergency responders, it sounded like a real suicide and a grieving wife trying to save her husband. Paramedics arrived within minutes. They found the scene just as Amy had described. Kyle was on the floor, not moving. Amy was kneeling beside him, doing chest compressions. She was crying, and her hands were shaking. It looked like a tragic suicide. The paramedics took over and rushed Kyle to the hospital. Doctors worked to save him, but it was too late. Kyle Pugh was pronounced dead on March 23, 2022. In the days that followed, Amy kept up her act. She told friends and family that Kyle had been struggling. She hinted that he was depressed. She cried as she described the horror of finding his body. To everyone, she seemed like a woman destroyed by grief. But some details did not make sense. The marks on Kyle's body told a different story. When investigators looked closer, Amy's perfect story started to fall apart. After any sudden or unexplained death, a forensic autopsy is done. For Kyle, this autopsy completely destroyed Amy's story. The doctor examining Kyle's body saw immediately that the injuries on his neck did not match a hanging. They matched manual strangulation. When a person hangs themselves, the mark on the neck is in a specific place and has a specific shape. The bruising is usually even. Kyle's injuries were different. The bruising looked like it was made by fingers and thumbs. There was damage inside his throat that happens when someone is choked by hands for a long time. All the evidence pointed to one conclusion: Kyle had been strangled. This was not a suicide. It was a murder. With this new information, investigators looked more closely at the crime scene. The setup Amy described didn't make sense. The things in the room didn't match a real suicide. There were also problems with Amy's story. When police interviewed her, she changed small details each time. Her timeline kept shifting. Investigators also learned about Amy and Kyle's past. Friends, neighbors, and family described a volatile relationship full of violence and jealousy. They shared that Kyle had been afraid the fights would one day go too far. Phone records showed the 20-minute gap between when Kyle stopped breathing and when Amy called for help. Experts said that delay likely cost Kyle his life. The most damaging evidence was the 999 call itself. Audio experts analyzed the recording. They said Amy's crying sounded performative. Her emotions seemed to spike at times when she knew she was being recorded. What first sounded like real panic started to sound fake. Piece by piece, the evidence built a clear picture. Amy Pugh had strangled her husband, waited for him to die, made the scene look like a suicide, and then called for help while pretending to be innocent. The investigation took time. In November 2024, over 2 years after Kyle's death, Amy Pugh was officially charged with murder. By June 2025, more than 3 years had passed since Kyle died. For his family, every day was filled with grief and frustration as they waited for justice. When Amy finally stood in court, she looked very different from the hysterical woman on the 999 call. She was calm and neat, showing almost no emotion. The prosecution's case was strong and clear. They stated simply, Kyle Pugh did not kill himself. He was murdered by the woman who claimed to love him. Doctors took the stand and explained Kyle's injuries. They showed the jury photos and diagrams. They pointed out the bruises and internal damage that could only come from being choked by someone's hands. The prosecution presented a timeline using phone records. They showed the jury the 20-minute delay. Medical experts said Kyle could have lived if help had come sooner. Then the 999 call was played in the courtroom. With all the other evidence, Amy's cries and pleas sounded fake. Audio experts pointed out where her performance was most obvious. Witnesses talked about the marriage. Neighbors talked about the constant fighting. Friends shared Kyle's fears that things would go too far one day. The defense tried to stick to Amy's original story. They said Kyle had killed himself and that Amy was just a flawed woman who panicked, not a murderer. But the forensic evidence was too powerful. The injuries on Kyle's body, the timeline, and the staged scene all told the truth. The jury listened to days of testimony. They saw the evidence and watched Amy's reactions. In the end, they found her guilty of murder. For Kyle's family, it was a moment of relief and deep sadness. Justice was served, but it couldn't bring Kyle back. On September 4th, 2025, the court met for the final time for sentencing. The judge spoke directly to Amy. He said her crime was deliberate. She choked her husband with her bare hands and had every chance to stop, but she didn't. He condemned her for staging a suicide and lying to everyone. The sentence was clear: life in prison. She must serve at least 13 years and 77 days before she can even be considered for parole. As the sentence was read, Amy showed no emotion. Her performance was finally over. For Kyle's family, this was the end of a 3-year fight for justice. They had endured Amy's lies while knowing the truth. Now, the truth was official. After the sentencing, representatives from the prosecution service spoke. They said Amy Pugh took Kyle's life, staged the scene, and tried to pretend he killed himself. Thanks to a thorough investigation and forensic science, the truth was revealed, and justice was served. The lead detective praised the investigative team and the family's patience. He said that no matter how good a performance is, forensic science cannot be fooled. The body tells the truth, even when words lie. This case shocked people because it showed a dark side of human nature. Amy Pugh didn't just kill her husband in a moment of anger. She calculated, she planned, and she performed. She looked paramedics in the eye and lied. She went to his funeral and accepted sympathy, all while knowing she was the one who killed him. For many, this case is a stark reminder of the hidden dangers of domestic violence. From the outside, Amy and Kyle seemed like a troubled couple who still loved each other. But behind closed doors, their relationship had become deadly. The case also shows how important forensic science is for justice. Without the careful autopsy and analysis of the scene and the 999 call, Amy might have gotten away with her lie. Kyle's death might have been written off as a suicide. Instead, the truth won. Science, persistence, and good investigation made sure Kyle's real story was told. For Kyle's family, life after the trial is mixed with emotions. They are relieved that Amy is in prison, but they are still in pain. Kyle is gone forever. He will never have another birthday, never laugh with his friends again, and never get the chance to build a full life. His family remembers him as he was, a person who was not perfect, but who was full of life. He made mistakes, but he did not deserve to be killed at 29 years old. They mourn the person he was, and the person he could have become. The case of Amy Pugh is a chilling example of how far someone will go to avoid taking responsibility for their actions. It shows how love and hate can become twisted together. And it proves that domestic violence can escalate in ways no one can predict until it is too late. Amy Pugh thought she could stage a convincing suicide. She thought her performance on the phone would be enough. She thought her tears would be more powerful than the physical evidence. She was wrong. Today, Amy Pugh is serving a life sentence in a British prison. She will be eligible for parole after 13 years and 77 days. Even if she is ever released, she will be labeled a murderer for the rest of her life. Thanks for watching, guys. If you found this story interesting, please like and share this video. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and press the bell icon so you can be the first to hear about such real-life stories.